Our guest tonight is author Gary James. He's here in St. Croix. New book. He's doing his Conversation Continues Part 6.
Absolutely.
How you doing? How you feeling, my brother?
Feeling excellent.
Yes,
feeling
sir.
excellent. Just from a small detour this morning.
Okay.
But right now I'm feeling very good and excited and enthusiastic, and feel that despite the detour, I can pull off the show.
Hey. Yes, I.
But as David pointed out, this is the 6th edition. And the last couple editions dealt with race and the impact of race in electoral politics in the mainland in the United States, as well as the Virgin Islands, as well as race as it relates to economic development, business development, particularly in the black community. And we also discussed race in the context of current events.
Right.
What is taking place around the country that is not really new, but it was really a surge that we've recently experienced with respect to the extrajudicial execution of black folk, black youth in particular. And so we talked about that. We talked about police profiling and police culture, the perennial culture. So we've discussed race in those other relationships, those 2 relationships or 3 relationships. But this evening we're going to carry the discussion on race in the context of race and the religious dimension. So in developing the conversation, we're going to define race from its earliest renditions by way of pseudoscience. And we will examine race in terms of current science. But religion, the religious dimension, is not usually discussed in the context of the race dimension. But we will explore that subject. But first we want to just talk about the race dimension in general, because it's usually juxtaposed to science, how race and science are at odds and in a juxtaposition, and that juxtaposition may in fact be irreconcilable. But we're going to take a contrary position on that, because from our perspective, the ancient controversy between religion and science regarding the origin of the human race is essentially settled. And perhaps there's only about, well, it's 90% settled. Let's put it that way, for general purposes. So there's only about 10% of the controversy that remains. We'll explore the 10% at another time. Right now, we want to just focus on the 90% between settlement between religion and science. And all of us are familiar with the Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden story. Whether we are believers or not, we're all familiar with the biblical story that includes sibling rivalry of Cain and Abel, as well as the birth of the human family. Now, current scientific evidence confirms this ancient story. And resources like National Geographic TV documentary series entitled In Search of Eve several years ago presented archaeological evidence and traced the migration of human patterns over the millennia that positioned human beings virtually in every corner of the planet Earth. And current evidence, scientific evidence, confirms that human beings are, in fact, one race. And the evidence confirms it, and 21st century science is not generally discussed when we speak in terms of the race question. But we all can appreciate that this current science posits that human beings come from a singular origin, vis-a-vis a woman in the region of East Africa. So the public has been accordingly informed regarding these findings on public TV as well, among other special events airing the findings. Therefore, the subject of race is often discussed during informal conversations. But the profundity of these scientific findings has not been translated into the perennial race question or the popular race conversation, etc. However they may want to term that. And so it's not in the public discourse. So consequently, a superfluous circular conversation becomes the popular exercise that asserts that all races are equal, so forth and so on. And so the nature of the public discussion on race, by way of media, news articles, educators, politicians, educated and or elected and unelected, these conversations really amount to an obfuscation of the truth and facts about race. The public conversations, institutions, and professional organizations, and everyone else continues to represent human beings as being comprised of different races. statements such as, there is no difference between the races, and we don't discriminate based on race, and popular refrains articulated from various quarters. Moreover, educational institutions, employment opportunities, all scenarios, virtually, housing, politics, healthcare, etc., 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 are all organized and operated based on the race dynamic. But we know that current science affirms that there's only one race of human beings, and we all can trace our ancestry to the same woman in East Africa. So therefore, any credible conversation about race going forward, it seems to us, must include or discuss race in the context of current science and debunk the traditional exposition. Accordingly, race is a social construct contrived to achieve subjective outcomes. Modern science has affirmed and confirmed that there is only one race of human beings. Therefore, the world is ultimately confronted with a fundamental contradiction. The fundamental contradiction is based on the fact that the world has generally been organized and stratified around the concept of multiple races, which has been scientifically discredited as we speak. So now the science in the 16th century, the age of Enlightenment or Enlightenment age, advanced the idea of multiple race-based hierarchical distinctions that position the black race at the bottom and the white race at the top of the pecking order, and the yellow and brown and red people in relative hierarchical scenarios. And the scholarship that characterized the age of enlightenment codified this race paradigm and etched it in stone as definitive evidence there are multiple races of human beings. In this intellectual framework, the Negro was born. A vulnerable beast of burden was born. This is the general overview regarding the black experience in Africa and in the New World, beginning in the 1500s. The race-based paradigm is the conventional narrative that perpetuates this race myth. But the historical myth began to fracture in the 1960s as the myth of the Negro race evaporated during the black political consciousness movement. Although the Negro is dead as a race, the race-based paradigm persists by way of sophisticated and sublime scenarios that have been reinforced over centuries of old structures and conventional sensibilities. Ultimately, we rely on the fidelity of current science. And we observe that world institutions and sensibilities are oriented toward the race paradigm. In this way, we can understand what race is and what race is not. We might not be able to eliminate the race motif, but we can put it in the proper perspective. Although the race equation has a head start of centuries, we can ensure that it will amount to no thing. Zero. The race social construct is pervasive and ubiquitous because it permeates virtually all echelons of modern society.
Gary, can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
One quick question.
Come on with it.
As you're talking about race and religion and and everything else, do ideology play a part in this?
Yeah. Ideology plays a part of it, and it plays a part from two angles. From the scientific angle,
right,
because an ideology has been born
right
out of this pseudoscience.
Okay.
So you have white supremacy as an ideology.
Yes.
Excuse me. You have eugenics as an ideology.
Yes.
You know, you have the Adolf Hitler thing. You see. And it also has a religious dimension in terms of ideology.
Right.
Because ideology is based in a lot of religious dogma. You see?
Yes.
So we're going to cover that.
Okay. Cool.
When we discuss religion.
Okay.
Apart from the usual religion and science
Gotcha.
juxtaposition.
Gotcha.
But I wanted to throw the religions and science juxtaposition out first.
Okay. Okay.
So we could position where religion is, as well as race, because we discussed race
right
in other permutations, you know. So we're going to discuss that particular piece as we move forward.
Gotcha.
You know.
Okay.
Because it's a very important one, and it has generated profound and sublime applications.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
And so, if I put it in a nutshell, we are living in philosophical inversion because of the ideology associated with science
religion,
and religion. You know.
All right.
So we're gonna go there.
Okay.
We're gonna go there. You know. But we inadvertently think in racial terms.
Right.
Because we're confronted with it all the time. And that is the conventional wisdom which only reinforces the deception. That's right. We've been deceived, and we continue to be deceived. The scope of the deception is difficult to put our hands around, but time is longer than twine. Therefore, competing narratives will ultimately emerge that would help to generate and broaden the various historical accounts of human and world events as formulated and advanced by the military victors in human history. And so, consequently, history such as it is in fact his story. Literally. So, but because time is longer than twine, it's only a matter of time before other historical narratives emerge that complement the popular historical account, adding to them a context of generating a holistic account of human events. Let me just digress a moment. Saturday, I watched a CNN news program. The news report stated that a police department was using criminal mugshots of black men as target practice. Police department. And
yes, I saw that.
You saw that?
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, that floored me. I said, because I listened to him. So I said, let me just take note of that, you know, and raise it in the context, you know, as an example of what I'm talking about, you know. This is CNN, baby. You understand? Max. So, the news report stated that the department was using mugshots of black men as target practice. And as a result, the police department was accused of racism because of this particular act. So now, what I found interesting was that the police department responded to the allegation of racism by, of course, denying it and making the point that they use mugshots of other races. Therefore, there was no act of racism because they used all races.
Well, you know, that would have been okay if that picture I saw was not only if it had many races there.
But that was all black.
Yeah, that was all black.
Yeah, that was all black.
Yeah.
Because I was talking about the same thing.
I saw that.
You see?
If they had a picture of every race there doing target practice,
Yeah.
I said okay.
Or even another one.
Yeah.
Even one of another one. It wouldn't have been all black.
Yeah.
You know.
But they were all black there. I thought that was strange. I just thought that was strange.
There was no consequences for the actions.
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
They're off the hook. Now dig The news announcer went on to editorialize with her colleague, asserting that the act of using the mugshots of blacks may be controversial, but it can't be racism because blacks are not the only race whose picture was used. It's deep stuff that's going on. You understand? Deep. So you see what's going on. I mean, it's
did they state what state this was?
They did, but I don't recall.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall either.
Yeah,
All right.
I don't.
And actually, I don't even know that they even did really, but I don't recall specifically.
Yeah. So they are perpetuating this race historical myth in a very casual, matter-of-fact way. And these are smart guys, right? They're the fact checkers. And too many engage this circular conversation on race. I mean, don't they have access to the latest scientific data? Allah, we are one. The multiple race myth will continue to be asserted because virtually all of the systems and institutions are structured and organized based on the multi-race paradigm.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'll just ask this question. When they're doing transplants, like organ transplants, do they pick a race or do they just pick a usable organ?
No, they pick a usable organ.
So then that again
That confirms.
that basically confirms the
There
whole
is no biological
logical basis for
where they're coming from with that.
Exactly.
Sometimes they use third world countries where people are in poverty and so forth and so on, and they got folks over there stealing organs.
Exactly.
There are many reports.
Yes. Okay.
I
just want to. Since
so-
you were just talking, that just popped into
but
my
there is no biological basis
for it.
for this thing to continue.
Yes, definitely.
You see?
Yes.
So the multiple race paradigm won't be changed, although it's proven to be insufficient and in error. It ain't going nowhere. See? So we have to understand certain scenarios. And although current science has debunked and discredited the multi-race idea with definitive evidence, we would be delusioned to expect that substantive change will occur going forward. The race conversation and the race question will remain a hot button circular with no resolution. It's good for ratings. You know, arbitrage, all that stuff. Sensationalism. Hey. But there are people like yours truly who will present the disposition of current science and inject the empirical perspective of science into the public discussion. But I'm under no delusion about the prospect of corrective action being undertaken by the relevant parties. And apart from raising the findings of current science during relevant forums, everyone else would be well advised not to overestimate any prospect of corrective action by the relevant authorities in general. We need to understand the limitations of our experience and how we have to come at things different ways. Praise the Lord. The popular American history will not be rewritten. The curriculum in public schools will not be overhauled going forward. It is what it is. My overall point is that we need to know what race is and what race is not, and be able to reference the proof for our own edification. And we could design what we have to do, how we need to approach and navigate the world, society such as it is, based upon current data, and understand what is occurring in the world today, such as it is, based upon these juxtapositions based on pseudoscience and politics and a whole lot of other funny stuff. But my larger point is that we need to rethink what we think. We need to think based on current relevant information. We can become what we think. And as a matter of fact, we are currently what we think. As a practical matter, therefore, the race baggage that we carry is most severe, burdensome, and insidious because it permeates most things, and invisible and sublime and profound scenarios are in place that automatically maintain the status quo. To be continued. So I just wanted to touch on aspect of race before we get to your point, Sue, which you raised a few shows back, as far as the religious dimension, and now the ideological piece, associated with that. So, the religious component. And so, the religious component to the multiple race paradigm. I mean, religion as we understand it, as it is presented and has been presented to us here in the New World, and all the world in general, how it has been presented in the elements of its domination. So we need to think based upon current information, and we need to realize that we are what we think currently. The religious component of the multiple race paradigm is controversial and a hot button issue. And religion is equally a hot button issue. And I want to talk a little bit about the religious component and race, as we mentioned. Therefore, I need to issue perhaps a general disclaimer. And in addition to that, offer a full disclosure of where Gary James stands in terms of his faith. So there's no illusions and confusions about stuff. Number one, I was raised in the Roman Catholic Church in New York City and completed all of my sacraments by the age of 12. My father, who was born on St. Croix, was baptized in Holy Cross Roman Catholic Church in Christiansted in March of 1922. And when he migrated to the States, New York, with my grandparents, he served as altar boy at St. Anthony of Padua Roman Catholic Church, where I completed my sacraments. So, although I was raised Roman Catholic, my historical perspective of Christianity was broadened. And to fast forward, I am a Judeo-Christian theologian, having studied the faith in the framework of the historical narrative in the West and in the context of the Eastern Orthodox tradition. We know them popularly, or from the West, from the Catholic and Protestant representation of the Eastern Orthodox. It generally stays quiet until there's a profound political scenario or during Christmas time. Because while the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church both celebrate and observe Christmas on December 25th. The Eastern Orthodox Church observes Christmas on January 6th. See? And we'll develop that further. But now, and interestingly enough, here in St. Croix, we observe Three Kings Day on the 6th of January. But in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, and when I'm talking about Eastern Orthodox tradition, I'm talking about the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Syrian Orthodox Church, the Armenian Orthodox Church. You see, so there's a range of Orthodox churches, and they celebrate Christmas on the 6th of January, which is according to the Julian calendar. But what is also interesting, they celebrate on January 6th, Three Kings Day, as well as the Feast of the Epiphany. You see, so it's only the Roman Catholic Church that separated the observance of Christmas, because until the Roman Catholic Church imposed its authority on world Christianity in 325 AD, the world celebrated Christmas on January 6th. And as a consequence of Rome's domination vis-a-vis the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, the official observance of Christmas Day became December 25th. Now, it came December 25th, many may know, because Rome, before the advent of Christianity, was pagan. Pagan worship was the preeminent religion in Rome and other parts of Europe. And according to pagan worship, the winter solstice, which begins on December 21st, was included in Constantine's appropriation of Christianity. And so December 25th became the official worship day for Christmas. And that was reconciled during the Age of Enlightenment by the Catholics coming up with the notion of there being 12 days to Christmas. So the 25th of December through the 6th of January constitute the 12 days. And that is how the juxtaposition of Christmas has been reconciled, in terms of the perspective of the Roman Church and how it was promoted since the 4th century. But it was in the 1500s where Pope Gregory introduced the Gregorian calendar, which officially established the 25th year as, So that was essentially how that works out. And the Eastern Orthodox tradition remains what it was, and the Western Christianity observes the 25th and separated Three Kings Day from the Christmas Day event. But biblical history and popular history points to the role that the Three Kings played as the first visitors and worshipers to the infant Christ, because they visited him bearing offerings, and in fact they had had an audience with Herod, you see, according to the biblical tradition, you see. And so that is where that emanates. So
I just want to touch something there, and that as we are on that subject too, and history repeated itself again too in 1892 at the birth of His Majesty, when the kings them knew that this child was going to be born, and the star was right there again too. Everything manifests itself again. So as you said, it started from the east and it stays in the east. So I just had
absolutely. And there's a unique interpretation of Christianity based in the east, which originates from the very well recorded relationship between King Solomon and Queen of
Sheba, yes.
which you could find in Old Testament.
First Kings.
You know,
Chapter
and
1.
it's also included in the
Keber Negas.
the Keber Negas. It's a very extended
Version.
account
Of it, exactly.
And even in the Quran,
okay,
there's an account
of
of the Solomon and Queen of Sheba
encounter.
So that's irrefutable. But what is often omitted is the fact that, with respect to Ethiopia, is the fact that Christianity is understood to be a Judeo-Christian religion, a connection between the two, you know. And there's no other church that can tout
that's right.
the familial lineage and heritage with the Judeo element, Judaic element. And as you mentioned, you referred to the emperor. Well, he was from the line of Judah. He was, you know,
the 225th king coming on that line.
And so that line is pretty well documented in terms of its establishment.
Right, and what's so grand about that too, Gary, that they could go back in BC and pinpoint it where it started and where the lineage continue to come forward up to today.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, it was 1000 BC, 1,000 years before the birth of Christ, that Menelik was consecrated as the first emperor of Ethiopia.
Yes, sir.
And when he left, leaving a replica of the ark in his place, he left with the firstborn
of all Israel.
Of the court.
Exactly. So there was
of the Levites.
There was exactly of all officials.
Absolutely.
Of all officials, because that's why they could have took that tradition from Israel and bring it into Ethiopia, continuing the traditions,
establishing
the traditions
tradition
in Ethiopia.
And in fact, Balthazar was the Ethiopian.
Exactly.
You see, so he was part of that triumvirate.
Exactly. Entrance into Jerusalem.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a lot of stuff with that, and we will discuss that moving forward.
Right.
But I can see that where we're going now, I'm going to have to carry on this discussion next show as well.
For sure.
Because I can see we got, we moved on a journey.
Yes.
And I still want to cover some points.
Of course.
And so I know I won't be able to get into the meat of the race, religion piece component. But I will be able to at least develop an elaborate full disclosure and disclaimer.
Yes.
You know, but in the interest of full disclosure, I am an ordained priest in the Ethiopian Church Coptic Rite. And I serve as Dean of Deacons and Students of the Balthazar Monastery. We do not proselytize. So that I want to make that clear in my exposition. We do not proselytize or otherwise promote our faith. And so this is not that. On the other hand, we advocate religious appreciation and ecumenical culture. In this context, we advance the Eastern Orthodox Christian historical narrative as a complement to the popular Greco-Roman historical narrative relative to the procession of Christianity in the West, particularly. So we believe that a coherent exposition and development of Christianity in both the East and West will help generate a holistic understanding relative to the developing of the Christian faith. So now, with respect to religious appreciation, which is what we promote, promote that. Religious appreciation does not require that you subscribe to or accept the religion of others. By appreciating the religion of others, what you do is recognize the right of a person to their own religious beliefs, and you recognize the integrity and sovereignty of the other religion. So we don't proselytize. We promote religious appreciation, which we think also engenders a level of humility regarding others that is useful going forward, not just in our conversations, but in general in terms of practical life and the practical application of navigating and negotiating our way in the world and understanding current events as they are unfolding on the planet. So we advocate and promote religious appreciation, because in our considered judgment, religious tolerance has over the centuries proven to be insufficient to modulating, minimizing, or reducing the contention between religions. As a matter of fact, the word tolerance, in our view, can hide disrespect, bigotry, and arrogance toward others. I could tolerate you with my mouth poked out, kind of thing, So it's a spiritual energy that is possible, an invisible spiritual malevolent energy that can live under the umbrella of tolerance. So, it's important to appreciate that, And so, therefore, appreciation going forward perhaps should replace tolerance, as the applicable process of understanding each other in different relations and whatnot. And then we also, as I mentioned, we promote ecumenical culture. Now, ecumenical culture observes that the human race, despite various ethnic groups, customs, traditions, is the way of life for human beings. The word is ecumenical culture vis-a-vis language. So all human beings operate the word vis-a-vis their specific language. And we all know the profundity of the word. So we can look at the word as the way to practice and appreciate and promote ecumenical culture. So accordingly, language is ecumenical. It's the ecumenical culture of the human race. Therefore, we all come from a singular source, going back to current science. The ancient religious ideas that human beings are in fact representative of one family is confirmed by current scientific evidence. Therefore, we advocate and promote that in the context of ecumenical culture, in terms of how that operates in the world of phenomena. So perhaps I'm about to say what is perhaps the most controversial and problematic position in our conversation. And that is that, and this again points to what your point was, Rasu. Christianity is generally perceived as a white man's religion. The perception is easy to conclude because Christianity is, for the most part, articulated by white folk. The Judeo-Christian iconography is represented by white people. And the popular Christian historical narrative advances Greco-Roman history and culture, which essentially asserts white folk as the custodians and purveyors of the popular Christian religion. Apart from the perception of Christianity as a white man's religion, the fact remains that Christianity came to Rome and the Western world 300 plus years after the fact. It's very well recorded in history. This was established in Rome. Christianity was established in Rome and Europe following the Council of Nicaea in 325, which we mentioned, vis-a-vis the first ecumenical council. So there was no Christianity in Rome or Europe prior to that date. That's what's up. And Rome has a colorful history of persecuting and burning Christians until 313 AD. The Christians during the early period of Rome's prosecution and so forth, and crucifixion, were from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. when Constantine signed the Treaty of Milan in 313 AD, that brought a halt to persecuting Christians and confiscating their property. 313 AD, check it out, Treaty of Milan, you could Google that, I'm certain. The Roman Catholic Church enjoyed an exclusive monopoly on Christianity from the 4th century to the 16th century, when the Protestant Reformation occurred, which bifurcated Christianity in the West between Catholics and Protestants. And we all know how colorful that history is and continues. But, you know, with this level of tolerance, it's not as, but there's other priorities in terms of religion these days, and as far as current events are concerned. So the Roman Catholic Church enjoyed this 1,200-year monopoly until the bifurcation into Protestants and Catholics. And following the Protestant Reformation, a plethora of Protestant denominations emerged, beginning with the Church of England, when Henry VIII backed off of the Pope because the Pope wouldn't grant his divorce, you see. So before Henry VIII backed out of Christianity and set up the Church of England, there was no separation between church and state. The Roman Catholic Church ruled Europe and the nobility. And there was a precarious marriage throughout history where one was a little bit more influential over the other, and so forth and so on. Very, very colorful history. And so the Protestant denominations continue to emerge as we speak, you see. So during the Council of Nicaea, all contingents of Christianity, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, were represented. However, the Ethiopian bishops were excommunicated from the Council of Nicaea and from all future ecumenical councils. The emperor excommunicated them. Now, Ethiopians had several ecclesiastical and irreconcilable differences with Rome in general, and the Ethiopian bishops refused to sign on to the Nicene Creed, which pledged them to Roman Catholic domination and their idea of the nature of Christ. So the controversy between Rome and Ethiopia is recorded in history as the East and West Schism. And the schism was the beginning of the separation between Christianity into two historical narratives relative to the procession of the faith. Christianity in the West by Catholics and Protestants, and Orthodox Christianity, which represented the faith in the East. So we've discussed the multiple race paradigm and its establishment and promotion in the popular culture and religious dimension. I want to briefly just go over a couple points we covered. We briefly examined race, and we posited that multiple races is a social construct and that it was designed and contrived for subjective outcomes. We understand, I think we covered that thoroughly, and science has done it for us. We examined current science on the subject and have observed that science has debunked and discredited the multiple race idea and confirmed and affirmed that there is only one race of human beings. We're currently exploring the religious dimension relative to race and have observed that the public perception of Christianity is that it is a white man's religion. That's the popular public perception. We have also explored East and West schism, which essentially established the dichotomy between the Church of Rome and the Ethiopian Church. Now, we briefly reference the period wherein Africans were enslaved in the Western Hemisphere, also known as the New World, which abolished slavery in the 19th century. In 1833, for example, the British abolished slavery. In the United States, slavery was abolished in 1865, and other colonial masters abolished slavery in at various times. The Danish, the Dutch, the Spanish, with perhaps one exception, and that is the scenario that occurred in Haiti, where the Haitians gained their freedom from France by way of revolution in 1804. So the anti-slavery movement began to generate esteem in Europe and in the countries because the populations in Europe and the colonies felt that slavery, as they saw it occurring over the 100 years, put them in an untenable position. And so slavery ended, which was really by popular demand, which caused the governments, the powers that be the colonial masters that had slaves on the mainland and in the Caribbean. It was an untenable position generated by popular demand. The prevailing European powers ultimately, if not reluctantly, responded to the will of the people, and the enslavement of Africans ended. But on the other hand, in 1884, under the umbrella of the Berlin Conference, the European powers, the so-called the former colonial masters, partitioned Africa into 50 separate countries with arbitrary borders that cobbled together divergent ethnic cultures of indigenous Africans and divided them between all of the European powers of the time. How are we doing on time, bro? Because I know I won't be able to get into the other piece. So this conversation will be extended.
Yes, maybe another 5-6 minutes.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So we will extend this conversation in our next show. What was that?
Next one's going to be
number 7.
Yeah, number 7 is going to be February 5th.
Okay, February 5th. So we will be prepared for that. But let me just, while we have a few minutes, let me just digress on religion further, and not getting into the race dynamic, but just generally, religion is the vernacular, the common vernacular for the spiritual world, which is essentially an invisible realm. And that's where we attribute God and the first inventor and the Almighty and Jah and other references. But it is the invisible realm, which is the spirit realm. And religion in general posits some spiritual ideas and formulates them into what we understand generally as organized religion, which permeates the world of phenomena, what we can see, what we can touch, what we can feel, the material and physical world. But we understand, because they even suggest in religious scripture that it's the spiritual dimension which is the essence of the whole deal. And the religious dimension, or it's the interpretation of the spiritual dimension, operates in the world of phenomena, the material world, the physical world, and it's the theologians, the clergy, that are juxtaposed between the people, the worshipers, and the spirit world. No matter what the religion is, but we're primarily talking about Judeo-Christianity, or the religions of Abraham, which would be more appropriate. But as we understand flawed human beings, we know that the interpretation from the spiritual world to the physical world, the realm of phenomena, something has been lost in the translation. And all of the prophets in Judaism, Christianity, vis-a-vis Jesus Christ, and even with Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, in all three religions of Abraham, the relevant prophets admonished us that there was no need for intercession, that God was within us. Nevertheless, organized religion was the popular interpretation, because we are human beings and we have certain tendencies toward ego, control, this, that, and the other thing. So therefore, there were some things lost in the translation. But let me say this, perhaps in closing. The spirit world is immutable, unchanging, while the religious world, organized religion, is mutable. And you can see how it has changed and how it continues to change. But my larger point is the immutability of the spirit world and spirit phenomena is not at all negatively impacted by the fact that things are lost in the translation when it comes down to organized religion. So we, as human beings, could talk all this stuff about organized religion, this, that, and the other thing. But as it exists on the spiritual realm, it's the same old, you see. And what we fail to understand in general is, in fact, it's a philosophical inversion that we live. Because we tend to believe as human beings, in fact, science promotes this idea, that seeing is believing. So if you can't see it, it ain't happening. You see? So therefore, the physical world is superior to the invisible world, the spirit world. But we know that it's really a philosophical inversion. That is the truth. And the physical world and organized religion, such as it exists, is subordinate to the spiritual world. And so that idea has been alluded to in many scripture, you know, and it is often talked about in terms of end times, you know, apocalypse and end days, eschatology, a whole range of things. And the religions of Abraham articulate these views. But in closing, let's understand that the spiritual world is superior to the physical world. And seeing ain't always believing. So perhaps we'll wrap it up there and just make the point that I'm looking forward to continuing
the conversation
next time. You said that's the 5th, right?
5th of February.
Yeah, good.
All right.
As I always say, I love what you guys are doing, and there's nothing you could do about it.
All right, thank you, Gary.
Thank you, bro. Yeah.
Thank you very much, man. Our guest tonight is Gary James. He's a local author here in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. Just completed Black Politics 2.0. His conversation continues, part 6. He'll be back here again on February 5th at 8 p.m. to continue his conversation, part 7. Thank you again for coming out and spending some time with us and sharing always good knowledge, insight on just a lot of different things. Soup, any final questions or comments? Or
it's always a pleasure to have you in the studio, my brother Gary.
Thank you, my brother.
It was a pleasure. With a wonderful wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Again, for me, everything is blessed and airy. Make sure you do what you got to do. Stay on point.
Harry Heights.
Yes, I. And with that, Rastafari lives. One perfect love.
Yeah, man, and we like to say one perfect love is our praise and his blessings. When you put it all together, you get one perfect love, man.